20 years ago, almost to the date, I was covering an NHL draft in Raleigh, North Carolina, when my son, surprisingly, was born back here in Pittsburgh. And I mentioned some of this to my fellow reporters on the hockey beat, and I was getting all kinds of congratulations and attaboys, and I come across Larry Brooks of the New York Post, and Larry, in his own inimitable way, upon hearing my news, says, "Well, what the blank you doing here?" Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. This is my way of saying that I like Larry. I have absolutely no issues with Larry. Never have, never expect to. In fact, he's been one of the more vocal proponents of our business. When we went independent and rogue, whatever you want to call it, 10 years ago at DK Pittsburgh Sports. So when I say what I'm about to say, don't take it as anything personal against Larry. But Larry put something on Twitter last night that was just absolutely ridiculous, and we're going to talk about it today. Larry tweeted, and I'm going to the entire thing verbatim. "I wonder how the final is going to be officiated. Will the Panthers be allowed to headhunt the way they were the first 3 games of the Rangers series? Will the officials attempt to protect Caitlin Clark? I mean, Connor McDavid." There's so much wrong with this within 280 characters that I can't even fathom where to begin. But I'll start here. How wonderful. I really mean that. How wonderful. If this was just Larry thinking like this, I wouldn't even bother wasting anybody's time with it today. But it's not. This is New York. This is how New Yorkers are. This is how they're feeling since the Rangers went out. The general sentiment in New York, and go right ahead and lick their tears right off of their cheeks, is that they got bullied by a team that prefers to headhunt. Headhunt. The team that is captained by Jacob Trouba, who never saw a head he didn't want to elbow. This is the victim. The team whose captain went right at Evan Rodriguez's head and connected. The team whose captain in the previous round took a literal flying leap, like I'm talking Christopher Reeve, jumping out the window into Martin Necas's head, and only because of Necas's remarkable show of reflexes did he happen to avoid a major injury. And if I start listing all of Trouba's many malfeasances, this show would take probably about 2.5 hours. You get the picture. The hypocrisy is through the roof, like through that big Tupperware lid that's on top of Madison Square Garden, way up there. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. But this is the reaction. They saw in their eyes, and this is how a lot of New York fans are. This is across all sports. When their teams don't come through, they portray it, and this begins with the media, but it really carries over to the fans there, as some sort of lack of heroism or valor or courage. They make these massive heroes out of whoever, just ordinary guys, because they called their shot or made a guarantee. They love that crap. They soak it up like crazy. So when it doesn't happen, rather than thinking about, I wonder what went wrong with the power play in that series against the Panthers. What did go wrong with that? Oh, right. They ran into an amazing penalty kill operation that the Panthers have, led by the best top 4 defense corps in the National Hockey League, backed by one of the league's more talented goaltenders, fronted by a Selke Trophy winner, a perennial Selke Trophy winner, and Alexander Barkov. Can't talk about that, though, right? Can't talk about that. Has to be about how Sam Bennett went after somebody in one of the first 2 games, and their own latest propped-up mythical hero, Matt Rempe, who really can't do anything other than fight in an era where fighting's just a non-thing, had an absolute zero impact on the series other than the fact that everybody clamored for him to be inserted into the lineup for one game, and they won that game, and all the reporters are asking Peter Laviolette afterward, what about the Rempe factor? What about the motivation that you got from Rempe, the energy that you feed off of him on the bench? It's all ridiculous, and it's all so very New York. Again, not at all specific to the Rangers. So where does this go? Well, it goes to some of the stuff that Larry said, but it also goes to, if you checked Rangers' social media over the past 48 hours, not that I did, but if you did, you'd see that the latest big push up there, and some of their media are already jumping on this, is to go get Brady Tkachuk from the Senators. I'm not making this up. Do a search on Brady and Rangers and see what comes up. Because A, it's New York's God-given right to be able to get any players that they want, even in a salary cap league. B, the Senators are complete idiots and would give up a Tkachuk because that worked out really well for the Flames. And C, they obviously wouldn't have to give up anything significant, like, say, Alexis Lafreniere, who'd be able to be a lot closer to his home and native land if he were to play in Canada's capital. And who, by the way, is coming off a terrific playoff run, 7 goals. For the former number 1 overall pick. But you want to know something? The Rangers would give that up. They'd give that up to get Brady Tkachuk the same way they gave up whatever they gave up to get Ryan Reeves, the same way that Jim Rutherford once did that, the same way that everybody makes this mistake. They think that because you lose a playoff series to some generally more stout, more solid opponent, that it must have been because they were tougher, meaner, nastier than you. That's not what happened. Yes, the Panthers have those traits. No, that's not why they've won either this series or the series before that. They've won because they have better hockey players. Doesn't make for much of a back page up there, though, does it? When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Chris, who says, DK, taking a moment to compare and contrast the Penguins' preferred style versus the Panthers, it's safe to say the Penguins would get pushed around and bullied with near total impunity based on their current roster, even worse than the Rangers were. Do you think the Panthers' style and overall construction is having any impact on Mike Sullivan and or Kyle Dubas as they go about shaping next year's roster? I don't, Chris. I don't. I also would, again, take issue with the idea that the Panthers bullied the Rangers. They wore them down. There's a difference. Panthers were physical. They weren't filthy. They went at the Rangers as part of their natural style of play. They're persistent. They're plucky. They're whatever it is that you want to call them, in addition to being highly skilled. That's what makes them the odd animal that they are in these playoffs. When you look at Sam Bennett, you don't think, hey, here's a guy you're just kind of carrying around as fourth line dead weight to just go hitting people. Sam Bennett's a real live hockey player with real live first round pedigree. When you see Matthew Tkachuk, same thing. But no, I don't believe you'll see either Sullivan or Dubas begin thinking in that direction. And to support that, this is going to sound strange to you at the beginning, but hear me out. I'm going to cite something from the Stars as an example. You know those usually worthless bench interviews that are had? Like, I'm talking about the middle of the game. Well, in Game 6 of Stars versus Oilers, ESPN had a reporter on the bench in Edmonton, and they approached Pete DeBoer and asked him about, just in general, the Stars getting a physical push out of a couple of players. I believe Jamie Benn was singled out. And DeBoer, instead of responding with, yeah, that's great, Ben's a real leader for the team, whatever, he came back with a whole bunch of stuff about how they need to stay out of the box, about how the Oilers' power play, which everybody knows, can really hurt you. We just need to stay out of the box, stay out of the box, stay out of the box. It's all he had. Well, you don't do that at the risk of letting off the hook an opponent that can't stand to be hit. That's Edmonton. That's been Edmonton ever since McDavid arrived, and it didn't matter how many other former number 1 overall picks they had in the house. They don't like to be hit. That's the reason the Canucks almost knocked them out, even though the Canucks ran out of, was it 2 or 3 goaltenders? I'm pretty sure they were down to number 3 by the time it was over, but Rick Tocchet knew this, and Rick Tocchet sent a Vancouver lineup that really isn't that innately physical after these Edmonton guys. Physically, he wanted to punish them. He wanted to wear them down, to use that term again. And he almost got away with it. The blueprint was sitting there for DeBoer in Dallas. It was sitting there. They opted not to go that way because they feared the Edmonton power play. Well, there's a lot of that type of sentiment, to hook this back finally, in Pittsburgh. There just is. If I, speaking of myself here, if I ever bring up with Sullivan a subject that has to do with physicality, I'm going to get an answer back like the one that DeBoer gave. That's how I was able to instantly recognize where DeBoer was coming from in that interview that I saw on television. They're more worried about the consequence of giving up a power play or getting involved in stuff that'll result in a retaliation of some sort or get people off of their focus or off of their mindset than they are about the possible benefits of just pounding somebody. And while I can appreciate that, and while I can appreciate Sullivan's system whenever it's at its optimal, I can also appreciate, there are some real positives to having 1 or 2 lines that go out there and do that sort of thing. And I will continue to advocate for the Penguins to have 1 or 2 lines that do that sort of thing, because all they've put together over the past 2-3 years are 3rd and 4th lines that go out there and do nothing. They kill the clock. They eat up time. They steal our oxygen inside the arena. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.